I'm Randall Hardy. I'm a home educating granddad these days. Our younger children were home educated, and I've been fighting on the political front since 2009 when Ed Balls and Graham Badman ganged up to try and bring in the first registers of children who are home educated. It was important to fight then, but we were not the pioneers in 2009. Other people had been. And the day this video is being released is the 15th of November, and that marks the anniversary of when a very strong-willed mother from Norfolk went to the appeal court in Norwich to appeal against being convicted of not providing her children with a suitable education. And she could have gone to prison for it. But she decided to stop out. That mother was called Joy Baker. And while she was far from perfect, who is? Don't we have a saying, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones? We all live in glass houses. So if anybody throws stones at somebody else, you know they're really trying to pull the wool over your eyes about them. But that's another matter. So Joy wasn't perfect, but she was feisty. And her book, Children in Chancery, records that. Now, that book is a bit like hen's teeth, and it'll cost you quite a lot to get these days. But I just want to read you something from it. But I also just want to tell you something about the background, because one of the quotes in it that I think is very relevant for 2024, as the Labour government promises us a children's wellbeing bill that will bring in registers of children not in school, we need to take notice of what Joy Baker said. In one place in her book, she says, no act of Parliament is capable of deciding the upbringing and the destiny of any individual child. And any act which restricts the natural right of the parent to care for the child is in breach of a higher law than that of Parliament. And Joy Baker really believed that. She believed it that much that she was willing, time and time again, over a 7-year period, to go to court to defend that principle that parents appeal to a far longer standing law than any Parliament can write. And of course, that's relevant today. So what I'm going to do, I want to read you a section that comes from chapter 17 of a book that's called The Final Court. And we're jumping in at page 217. And she's been describing what went on during the hearing when she appealed her conviction for surrounding two of her daughters' education. They'd had an adjournment for lunch. She was released from arrest over lunchtime, but had to go back into it. The place I'm starting from picks up after lunch when the chairman of the court comes back to give the verdict. She writes, what we have to decide, said Mr. North, is whether the education of these children are getting complies with the Education Act 1944. We cannot see that it doesn't. Suddenly, I realized what he was saying. There has been little evidence, continued Mr. North, apart from what Mrs. Baker told us, of what education the children have acquired. An educational official said he had visited the home in May 1960, but was not sure whether he saw the girls. It was impossible for him to say what degree of education they had attained. Mrs. Baker has told us a great deal about her views on education, and we cannot see that what she has described fails to satisfy the rather wider terms of the Education Act. The appeal therefore succeeds. After 7 years, I had won. It did not matter now that my eyes were full of tears. I stood up and said, "Thank you." At my side, apparently unable to believe what she had heard either, the prison officer grabbed my arm and tried to pull me down again. But it was really true. And this decision wiped out the magistrate's order to bring the girls before the juvenile court. I left the dock victorious and free. I had won outright at last. Well, she had with those two girls, but she goes on to tell you how the local authority insisted on taking her back to court for one of her younger boys. She goes on and she wins that one as well, but this was the major victory for this mum. So, why am I saying this? What we need now are parents with that amount of determination. I know we're in a different time and a different place, and a lot of home educators don't know what's gone before. They don't know what people like Joy Baker, and she wasn't the only one, fought for in the past. They're not aware what some of us has been fighting for the last 15 years. This is about parental responsibility. What Joy Baker said in that quote I started with, no act of Parliament which restricts the natural right of parents to care for their child can be given into. It has to be resisted. And as we go forward, we need people to stand up and look at the bigger issues and decide, are they going to have that love and care for their children? They will stand between the state and their children. Or are they going to roll over and walk away when their children needs them the most? Just let me say, if you want to buy a copy of Joy Baker's book, which has been out of print, I've managed to find one on the internet. It's going to cost you £40. But that good old place, the Internet Archive, has got a copy which has been scanned and posted up there. The title's been misspelt, but that doesn't really matter. The content's good. And you simply need an account with the Internet Archive to be able to borrow the book. You can borrow it and read it and then return it. And that's their way of making sure they're acting like a library. So please, on this day and every day, think of those who've gone before you to protect your parenthood and your children's futures. And please stand up to local authorities or the state when they try and pass acts that will take your parenthood away.